Wherever you are in Australia, good morning, good afternoon, and welcome to Networking for the Introverted, the Nervous, and the Absolutely Terrified. There's going to be a bit of all of us in there today. It may surprise you that for someone who does presentations like this multiple times a week, I'm definitely more on the introverted side and don't tend to do networking as well as I'd like to. But I have improved from a basically hero, not to zero, not quite a hero, but I'm on my way to becoming a better networker all the time. I'm going to be presenting these through slides. You can feel free to take screenshots. This will be available on YouTube afterwards. So let's get that screen shared and get underway and enjoy the process, I guess, of doing a bit more networking, but not being so terrified about it. First up, a quote from Ivan Misner, the founder of BNI, or Business Networking International, saying that networking is more about farming than it is about hunting. And that is so true. It takes nurturing, it takes time, it takes the ability to be able to invest into your farm, invest into your network, rather than simply going out with a bow and arrow and just shooting at the first thing that moves so that you can feed your business. Hopefully you'll understand a bit more about networking as we get to the end of this. It's brought to you by Business Station and the Digital Solutions Program, an initiative of the Australian government, and we will have this recorded for you on YouTube in the next few hours. If you're watching this after the fact on YouTube and you're live with me right now on Zoom, and if you are, please drop in some questions along the way. I'd love to be able to answer them and help you along with those as well. But if you're not on Zoom at the moment, you're on YouTube, please pop some comments down below and we'll come back to you with some answers. The team at Business Station and as well on my own channel, Dante and James, we'll be able to answer those questions and address them for you in some way. What we're going to cover today is the 10 benefits of networking. We're going to look at why networking is just so darn hard. Why is it so difficult for us to do it? And then I've got a way of us helping to learn to love networking, as well as looking at some of the places you can consider when it comes to networking. I'll add a few of my own perspectives in there as well for some of the networks that have worked really well for me and to what level they've actually helped to bring me new business personally as well. First of all, my background is in my own businesses, Clickstarter, DanteandJames.com, and Cellular One. I'm also a digital solutions advisor and entrepreneurship facilitator with Business Station in the Northern Territory and Darwin, though I do work all over the country, especially in North Queensland, Southeast Queensland, and Northwest WA. I've done a lot of study, university, a lot of certifications, do a lot of work with Meta or Facebook. A Canva certified creative, which is a very recent thing I've just done. Started up a new group called Startup Territory, which is all about networking and learning to start your new business. And I work a lot with Lean Startup Labs as well as a contributor and as a someone who's working with them to do more. The 10 benefits of networking is where we're going to start today. And there's probably hundreds of benefits really of doing some sort of business networking. But the 10 benefits we're going to talk about today are going to be wrapped up in the things that you can get out of being an effective networker. Or even if you're not an effective networker and you want to be a better networker, we're going to help you out with that too. So the first benefits I would say to do with networking and to do with fresh ideas. It's the idea of exchanging information, asking for help, offering help, getting a fresh set of eyes on problems that you might be wanting to solve, or a fresh set of eyes on the things that you may want to address in your business, because there's likely to be others who are there to help, who are going to be going through those same sorts of problems that you're going through as well. The exchanging information means you need to be a little bit vulnerable. You might need to tell people a little bit more about your business and the problems you're going through in order for you to find some people who are going to help you out a bit more with that. That means also asking for help. If you're not someone who likes to ask for help, you might be someone who prefers to just go it alone. Well, then in that case, then you might need to think of other ways in which to connect with people. And sometimes that might be in online networking. But offering help is one way that really allows you to dig deep and offer something of yourself to the network. And this will become a little bit more obvious later on when we look at the ways we're looking at networking as not just being a one-way street where you are getting help all the time, but you're actually able to offer something out of your own areas of expertise. Another benefit of networking is raising your profile. Now, this is important if you're a new business because you may not have a lot of money for a lot of other kinds of marketing, such as Facebook ads, Google ads, television and radio ads. So raising your profile from one person to the next person could be a really valid way of marketing your business. But this does require you being consistent and consistently showing up to networking events, which may be terrifying for you if you're not someone who really enjoys the process of networking. It's also going to depend a lot upon who you show up as. And I had some interesting conversations with Sean Sewell, who's a great business coach here in Australia and has done some amazing work with some amazing people in his inner circle that he works with. And one of the things he likes to put himself into is this sort of a state of mind where he asks himself, who am I showing up as right now? And if he's not showing up as the things, the core things that he wants to show up when he meets people, when he presents, when he does work with people, then there's something wrong and he needs to correct that and often needs to apologize and say, look, I'm not being authentic right now. And authenticity was one of his, being humble and being vulnerable. They were his three: authentic, humble, and vulnerable were his ones. So I share a couple of those with him. The things I like to show up with is that I want to be effective, I want to be authentic, I want to be vulnerable, and I want to be honest. Not powder coating things so they seem better than they are. It's being very honest with you about the things that work and don't work, and especially the things that I've had experience with. And if I don't have experience at that level, there's no use me getting behind a camera and teaching a bunch of people how to do it. And this then leads to your reputation. So if you're showing up as that same person every time and you're consistently showing up to those, you're not all over the place, you're not just picking and choosing events you want to go to, then you get the reputation of being someone who's not only full of expertise, but someone who is also reliable. And that reliability factor is so important for when it comes to networking and people wanting to work with you. Nobody wants to work with someone who sometimes turns up, sometimes doesn't turn up, sometimes they don't really participate, they don't really offer that much. What we want to do is talk with people who we feel comfortable dealing with because they are consistent. The person they are is consistent and they have a good reputation and good integrity from consistently showing up as the person that they are in that network. So raising your profile, definite benefit of networking. Next one is connections. And this is all part of that whole sales process that involves people knowing you, liking you, and trusting you enough to buy your product or to sign up for your services. First of all, people need to know you. If they don't know you, they don't know what you do. And they don't know what you do, they don't have any sort of way of judging whether they need what you do. But then there's also the like factor. People do need to like you. We are social creatures after all. We're not going to always deal with people we can't stand just because they're the only person in town. Sometimes we'll go well out of our way to not deal with that person because we want to work with someone else. So the like factor needs to be there. And you might think, oh, I'm not really a sociable, likable person. That's okay. There's more than one way to get someone to like you. And this doesn't mean that constantly giving away your time, your effort, your money, and buying them drinks and being the life of the party. In fact, that doesn't make you likable. It just makes you easily used. And then there's a trust factor. When someone knows you, they're most likely to like you. If they like you, then they're more likely to trust you to be able to deliver the products and the services that you want to work with. So when you do that, you're able to get that full range of feelings and connections that people want when they want to work with you as a business, which keeps you top of mind. They know you, they like you, they trust you. They're right there in the front of mind. So they know when I need someone who does essential oils, I know that she does essential oils and I can turn straight to her. Or if I know someone who mentions to me that they need a plumber, I know a plumber who's reliable because I know them, I like them, and I trust them. And networks are probably the best place to get that know, like, trust factor together because you've got so much time that's dedicated into the knowing, the liking, the trusting so that people can understand who you are. And then they understand who you are, they have no problem referring you to everybody they know who needs what it is you do. And you build connections with people not by being the person who's constantly taking. You become connected to people in a really valuable way by sharing as well. So it's not just by continually going and just taking connections, taking leads, taking referrals. You can offer some in there too. It makes for good human connection. And at the core of all these networking events and functions and organizations is people. They're just basically a collection of people who are all in it, not just for themselves, but some higher purpose. And we'll talk a bit more about that later on as well. Now that we talk about connections, we move on to the next benefit, which is all about opportunities. Presence is opportunity. Now, people say, oh, yeah, it must have been in the right place at the right time to get that opportunity. This is right place at right time in action. It's you making sure you're in the place, which is the right place at the right time to get the result you want. It doesn't come down to luck. It comes down to continually showing up. It gives you inside knowledge to certain moves in your industry or things that are going on in the economy in your local area, and gives you easy introductions to people who can help solve your problems, and also introductions to people to you where you can help solve their problems. And it's not all just a for free pro bono thing. A lot of the time, it's just a matter of being able to do those introductions as a matter of just being a good human being. I know that you're a plumber. Why wouldn't I introduce someone I know to you? Because I know and like and trust you. So I would just trust that you do a good job with them and you'd be a good steward of that introduction that I've made. So benefits of networking are not always social. They're not always immediately business related, but they put you in the middle of where opportunities happen. Where business people come together is where opportunities are made. And those opportunities might just be mentoring. Those opportunities might just be more connections and networking. But at their best, those opportunities are sales or introductions to the people who need what you do and will get that sale. Another benefit of networking is learning. This is one of the most underrated things you can get out of a business network, is more access to new information, new ways of doing things. You can ask experts in the room. A lot of networking functions will have an expert speaker who you would never normally have any access to. But now, because you're in that room, remember the opportunities we were talking about in the last slide, because you're in the room, you now have the opportunity to ask that question to an expert face to face, or on a Zoom call or on a Teams call if you're not doing the in-person thing quite yet in where you live, and allows you to watch the leaders. And throw this sip of water, I'll tell you what I mean about that. Now, watching the leaders is like noticing what the great people are doing. It's like watching someone who's a great business owner and watching her and the way that she interacts with other people and learning the way of mastery and the way of the people who are best at what they do. You're watching the best in the business and how they interact with people. If you're terrified of networking, you don't know where to start, watch the people that are really good at it. Watch how they apparently work a room or schmooze around a room. You'll find it's effortless. It's effortless and it's natural, and it makes people feel really well liked and they feel heard and understood when a really good networker has a conversation with them. It's a beautiful thing to watch. You see a master networker and watching her move around a room, having conversations that add value to everybody they speak to. It's like, I like to think of a master networker as being like a butterfly. A butterfly can flit and float and go from flower to flower to flower and garden to garden, but everywhere where that butterfly lands is made better because the butterfly landed there. And that's what a master networker does. So you can learn all sorts of information. You can learn industry information. You can learn updates and educational stuff. You can get in touch with experts through networking, but you can learn so much about business and so much about the way to deal with people by watching the people who are really good at networking in those events and functions. So I really encourage you to do that. There's also advice and support to be found in spades when it comes to networking. And I'm talking about, the more advanced people in your industries who may be in those functions. I love having conversations with my competitors who are 25 years further down the track than I am, because they're so willing to share their journeys and share the ups and downs and be honest about where they're at. And I love that about my industry, because we're all in, I wouldn't say cutthroat competition, but we all come from a very big mindset of abundance. We believe that not even all of us who are serving these areas are able, because we're so busy, we're also busy with clients. We know there's so much more room and headspace to be able to get more clients. So we like to share referrals and share referrals to each other. And I love that. My biggest competitor in town in Darwin is constantly referring people to me, and I'm constantly referring people to them, simply because we all do good work, but we do slightly different things. Maybe I don't want to do that job, but I can pass it on to them to be able to do it. Advice and support can come in the form of mentorships, and a lot of networks will provide that kind of mentorship as part of what they do. Or you might be buddied up into smaller groups of industry relevant people. So you're actually getting some good value from people who may be further along the journey than what you are. And there's structure. Structure makes it so much easier to approach these things, so you don't feel quite so stupid asking someone for help or asking them to explain something, because the structures are in place within networking events that allow that to happen. A networking event isn't beer and pizza and just rocking up and just fumbling your way through. There should be some kind of structure that helps you to follow that way. And if there's none in that particular networking organization you go to, it may be time to look at another networking event or another networking organization that more effectively handles the introduction of new members, more effectively handles the buddying up and the growth and the consistency of members who are there, and actually makes you want to come, not just because you're being forced to out of accountability, but you're doing it because you see so much value that is coming to you, and even more so, how much value you as an expert, as a business owner, as a very smart individual can offer to that network as well. So benefits are obvious. Confidence is another one. You get to step out of your comfort zone. And if you're someone who's not confident with stepping out of your comfort zone, I tell you what, go to a networking function with someone who is. There's going to be a friend, there's going to be a fellow business owner who you know, who you feel comfortable around, and they will introduce you to everybody. I love doing that in networks where I'm a member and someone's new that I take along. I can happily just go introduce, and I do it in a structured way. Hi, this is Haley. Haley's a colleague of mine who works in this, and she's looking to work with more people who are doing this, and this. This is Troy, and Troy is working in this particular industry. So Haley, I think you guys actually might have a few things in common. So we want to have a chat about that. I'm just going to go and get a drink, and I'll come back and check in with you in a sec. I've got a very solid structure for introducing people at the points of where they've got common interests or common problems they might want to solve. And that's one of the things we'll look at very shortly. But it does take a little bit of vulnerability. You're going to have to let some people in. Doesn't mean telling them all your hopes and dreams for the future and your whole life story. In fact, I would encourage you not to do those things in a working function. It might be a little bit too heavy for most people to hear your whole childhood growing up story. But what it does is it allows you to show your humanity. And when you see the humanity in someone, there's an empathy that rises up in all of us that helps us to go, oh my goodness, I either want to give you a hug or I just want to talk to you more because there's something about you that's so fascinating. And that connection is what differs us from the animals. We have this affinity that can grow through empathy with each other. It's not just a matter of you are of value to me, I'm of value to you, let's move together as the flock. It's more of a, wow, I feel really deeply impacted by something you just said, and that makes me want to know you, which is going to make me then like you, and then eventually trust you as well. That refers back to when we're talking about the knowing, the liking, and the trusting. And it builds your networking muscle. The more you do it, the better you're going to get at it. So if you've got a nice routine to go in there, a strategy you're going to walk in with, then it means when you do that again, and the next time do it again, and next time do it again, you're going to have the ability to, to meet a lot more people and to get closer to those people who can connect you with your customers, or at least connect you with someone who can use some help from you at some stage. Now we move on to those new perspectives, which is so important when it comes to getting stuck in a rut. No one should be stuck in a rut, because what it does, it just causes us to have nothing but problems, because we get stuck in our old ways of doing things, and we get stuck in our old ways of, I guess, of being and acting, and we don't have any sort of room for growth or change. And a business that can't grow or change is at severe disadvantage in a competitive world like we're in, and in a world where the ability to be able to grow and change makes for a much more agile business that can move faster, do more, be more effective, and serve more people in a more highly impacting way. And that's what I think the new perspectives are. When you introduce the new people, new perspectives, it makes a big difference. It allows you to think differently and act accordingly and move better through your business. Relationships are also a big benefit. You can meet like-minded people, and we always like meeting people that have a similar view to our own, whether it's our view on prevention of cruelty to animals, or whether it's our view on LGBTIQA justice and rights. If we have some sort of thing in common, we can connect more, and that gets back to the knowing you, liking you, and trusting you method. Driven and goal-oriented people tend to be in these networks, and that is good to be around because you become the people that you hang around the most. And if you're going to one networking event a month, at least that one night a month, you hang around particularly motivated and driven and goal-oriented people, which means that you, as you do it more, become more motivated, driven, and goal-oriented as well. You become more effective as you're around more effective people, rather than being around people who are constantly putting you down for starting a business. Because why did you get a job just like your brother did? He seems so much more happy and stable. If you're around other business owners who are succeeding, who are growing, who have got really good things to input to the conversation, then this is a way for you. I think in the Bible, it's called iron sharpens iron. And when we talk about iron sharpens iron, it's the ability for you to be able to, you can't sharpen a diamond with a dull bronze sword. You need to use diamond to sharpen diamond. So if you want to sharpen each other up, be around people who you want to be more like. It's also a great place for getting really easy, quick answers. I like getting quick answers from people who are better than me in the room. They have an answer every question. It depends on how big your network is. You've got a big enough network, there's someone in there who's got the answer to the problem you've got. The bigger the network, the more answers you're going to find. And finally, as we look at the last of these benefits, I say, look at the takeaways. Networking has clear benefits. Learning and growing is part of what you do in networking. There's the opportunity for you to build a profile and build your confidence and increase that networking muscle every time you go to an event and participate in it. And have a clear picture before you go to networking events and functions of who you want to show up as. When you go in with that mindset of saying, I want to be authentic, vulnerable, humble, then make sure you turn up and test yourself during the night or the afternoon or the lunch of being authentic, humble, and vulnerable as well. So I hope you've learned something out of that first part. Let's move on to part two, which is why networking is so hard. Why is networking so darn hard? It shouldn't be. It should be easy. It should be really simple. We're humans. We're social creatures. Surely there's a way to make networking easy. So why is it so difficult, and why are we struggling with it all the time? Well, first of all, we often confuse the concept of networking with the concept of being sociable. I am not a sociable person. I like my own company. I like the company of a very small group of circle of friends who I can be very authentic, humble, and vulnerable with. I don't like being fake around people, and I really don't enjoy being around networks where I have to be fake. So for me, it is a struggle to network, but I've increased my muscle over time to be able to be a more effective networker. But you don't have to be sociable to be a good networker. In fact, they're completely unrelated to each other. You can be a fantastic networker just because of the fact that you have a plan and a strategy to go into networking functions all the time that doesn't require you being the bubbly personality person. Honestly, the bubbly personality person drive introverts like me absolutely mad because they're frantic, they're manic, they're too much. So you don't have to be mega sociable to be a really, really good networker. That's the first myth I want to bust in here today. Secondly, networking events are often focusing on things like social activities and icebreakers, which for people like me, and maybe you as well, makes us sort of crawl into our shell and just not want to come back out again because we find it so irksome and so annoying and so, we don't want to really be part of it. It's just something that doesn't interest us at all. So what we do, we crawl back into our box and we don't take part in it. What this means is that maybe you need to go to a different kind of networking event that doesn't focus so much on the social aspects, but more on the networking and business aspects. We also don't tend to start networking at number 3 until we need it the most. Until we go, I need help in my business. I need to network. Oh, quick, go out and find a network and join it. So what we've done is just walked on into a network, hoping to solve all our problems. We come in with an air of desperation or an air of, I'm going to promote myself to the wazoo to make sure everyone knows in here what I do and who it's for. That's not what a network is. It's not just about you telling everybody what you do in the hope that someone's going to buy from you. In fact, a network is most effective, not with the people who are in the room with you, but the people that they know that are never going to be in that room because they'll be able to refer you to those people. So getting in as early as possible in your business to network is something that's really valuable because it sets you up for success rather than using it as an ambulance for fixing up broken businesses, because it's not very good at that at all. Number 4, we're all so very busy. We've got lots going on. We've got kids, we've got pickups, we've got committees, we've got soccer clubs and ballet recitals, and we've got school things, and there's so much going on in our businesses. And I haven't even mentioned the business stuff yet. So trying to get time to go and network feels a little indulgent. I understand that. I've got a very busy life as well, but I go to 4 or 5 networking functions a month because it's so important to the growth of my business that I have to do it. Number 5, we often struggle to ask for help. It's a pride thing. We don't want to be having to be the person who's always turning up and going, help me, I'm just struggling, I'm drowning again. So this whole thing, if you're someone who isn't used to being vulnerable, isn't used to asking for help, it's going to be a struggle for you. You're going to find it hard to work into a network where particularly they want to be able to help you and they want to be able to identify where your struggles are. Number 6, we tend to start and stop a lot. We'll go to a networking function in January, but then we won't go until March. And then we'll miss a whole bunch of months until it's July. We'll go again. And then it's October business month or small business month. And it's like, oh, I should go along to that event. You stop and start. People go, oh, I haven't seen you in months. That's usually the sign that you haven't been networking properly and networking enough, is if people say, oh, I haven't seen you for months in a network that has events every month. That's when you know you've got a problem. So we tend to start and stop a lot, which tends to slow us down in that process, because it's just like trying to learn how to ride a bike or drive a car. You don't do it by parking the car and not driving again for a month and then getting back in and learning again how to drive. You lose those. If you don't use it, you lose it, especially with networking. Networking is also relational, not transactional. And some of us like to think in terms of transactions. I give you this, you give me that. I put in 25 cents to a machine. I get this out of the vending machine. We want it to work like that. We want it to be, here's a formula, here's a process, do this, and then out of networking, I get this return on investment. It doesn't work like that because it's relational. Relational means that you're going to have to build relationships with people in order to be able to get into their networks. It's not about getting just into the network where you're going to be talking. You also then need to be able to work with the networks outside of that too. Number 8, we don't see our customer in the network, so we tend to give up. If we turn up to a network and go, I can't sell to any of these people because they don't need what I've got, that's a really short-sighted approach, because the customer is the person that they know. Remember, when you go to a network, it's not about the person you meet, it's about the people that they know. So you've got a really good opportunity to let someone know who you are, what you do, and who it's for, so they can then, in their mind, you can see it working over time to connect what you are and what you do with people they know who need that particular product or that service. Number 10, it feels fake. Oh, it really grinds my gears when there's these little icebreakers and social things and falling down on each other and Tony Robbins walking on hot coals crap that people go on about. It feels so fake. It feels so staged. It feels so inauthentic. And that's a massive problem for me, because one of my core values is to be authentic when I'm doing these things. So when I'm not authentic, I feel really irky. Number 10, it can be a barrier because there's race, gender, language, identity, and disability barriers there. There's nothing like walking into the boys' club as a gay man and knowing very much they know I'm the gay man and treating me differently because I am the gay man. I don't strike that a lot because I don't present initially as a gay man to people in the same way that people might have a preconception of the behavior and the appearance and the speech intonations of a gay man. But it's there. It's always something going to go. Now, I'm not even in a vulnerable minority in that case. I'm not someone who wears their identity as the color of their skin. I'm not walking in with people automatically going, you're Indigenous, therefore I have a preconception. You are African, therefore I have a preconception. You are a woman, therefore I have a preconception. There are definite barriers in networking organizations when it comes to this, and very few of those networking organizations and events have any kind of focus upon inclusiveness and diversity, let alone the ways of treating people in terms of the identity, knowing what pronouns are and how to work with addressing people with pronouns or without pronouns. There's a lot of work to be done in that. And I can see why some people who are from diverse races, genders, languages, identities, and abilities are feeling a little bit like this place is not really for them. So there's a lot of work that needs to be done, and it can be done. So some takeaways from this section would be that networking has a purpose, and it has to have a purpose. It will take some effort. It's not like all networks are equal. You're not going to find everything in the one network you go to. There's many networks to serve you, even in smaller towns and smaller regional centers. And you've got to not treat going to networking as fishing for clients. You've got to look at it as you're fishing for people who will refer you to your future clients in the future. And that means you've got to connect. You've got to do a little bit of socializing, not a lot. You can actually get away with just making it very, very rigid and very methodical. In fact, it's the way most people do it. But understanding that people really do want to meet you and they're looking forward to meeting you will really help you to become a better networker. How do you learn to love networking? How do you do it? How do you come across as someone who doesn't just do networking well, but absolutely loves doing that networking? If you're one of the nervous, the introverted, or the terrified, and networking is really not your bag of chips, then this may be the best part for you. You can learn to love networking. You can learn to love networking even if you hate it. And I have been quoted a lot as saying that I hate networking. It can be turned around. I'm going to give you an example. There's a New York law firm who was 174 lawyers, very big firm. And in that 174 lawyers, they looked at the differences between people who approached networking like a chore and those who approached it like an opportunity. And they found that the people who were more connected to the chore thing were underperforming in their work as well. Those who approached it as an opportunity tend to be the star performers on the floor. So it's a very close connection between the two. But aversion to networking can be overcome. And I'll share a few tips from my own journey, but as well, show you some very well-known and very researched angles of how to overcome your fear of networking. If I hated networking and came to enjoy it, you definitely can too. The learning to love networking comes in 4 steps. First, you've got to focus on the learning, not on the task. Find common interests. Focus on what you can bring to the networking and approach it with what we call a higher purpose or a bigger goal or a bigger picture. So let's explore all that a little bit more. Focusing on the learning means going into it as something that's not necessarily a networking event, but a learning event. So let's have a look at that. When it comes to networking, there's kind of 2 different kinds of psychology at play. There's a person who we call the promoter. The promoter is going into networking because of the growth potential, the advantages of networking, the accomplishments they can get done with networking. And then there's the preventer. And you'll be one of these two. Generally, the more introverted that we are, but the more of a preventer we tend to be. And that's where we feel obligated to go to these things. Don't really want to go, but we feel obligated. We've got very professional reasons for going. And we're a little bit skeptical as well. We're not really skeptical. We're not really convinced this whole networking gig is going to help us out all that much. So we just tend to get a little bit blocked off to it. So what we do as a promoter, we'll go in excited and curious and we'll do lots of networking because we see the value in it. The preventer, though, sees it as a necessary evil and they think it's very fake and inauthentic, and they do these things far less often than what other people would do it. The promoter then tends to excel at their work and businesses. They tend to do really, really well at that. But the preventer, and I am a preventer and I've had to learn how to become a promoter instead of a preventer. They tend to underperform at their work and businesses. And that was certainly me. It wasn't until I became more of a promoter than a preventer that I got really, really good at this. And my business improved and my work improved as well. By focusing on the learning, what you're doing is teaching yourself to be someone who understands who they are. Being a preventer is not a bad thing. It's just a place to start from. So you may go into that function going, I hate these functions. But then you stop yourself and think, but you never know what opportunities might come up. There's always a chance for something to go well. And I know a few people. And so it's, you know what, I hate these things, but I kind of also like seeing a couple of the people that I know and like in the business too. So just do it. Just go out there and do it. And now you arrive at a very different state of mind than what you originally did when you're thinking about, I hate these functions. You now start to think of yourself as a much more calm. I'm going to see people I know. I'm even going to see some people I like, God forbid. And I'm arriving there with a state of mind that's ready to meet people and talk about opportunities and see opportunities rather than seeing this as something, I have to do this every month. Oh, boring. Your state management in this case, where you're managing yourself from being, I hate these functions, to arriving with a great state of mind of curiosity and adventure, is going to make all the difference for how networking works out for you. It's going to be less of a chore and more of something that's great. You may say, I am not sociable. And so many of us in the introvert category are not sociable, but I might learn something. That's where I switch it. I'm not sociable, but I might learn something in this. And by wanting to learn, you become a better listener. Learners need to listen. They can't talk. You can't learn something while you're talking. What you can do, though, is learn something while you're listening. And guess what? Listeners are fantastic networkers because they're there to listen to other people's stories. And by becoming a giver of referrals to that person because they understand their business and what they're looking for, they funnily enough become this person that other people want to give to as well. And they want to become the referrers to your business. So there's a little bit of, B&I calls it giver's gain, and it's a really good thing. The more you give, the more you gain. You can call it karma. What you give is what you get. You can call it the golden rule, treat others as you wish to be treated, whatever you want to paint it as part of your philosophy or your religion or your background. It's basically you give a little, you get a little, you give a lot, you get a lot. You know, if you're going to sow a lot of effort and time into something like a network, you're going to do a whole lot better than those who just have not done anything at all to contribute to it. Now we're going to look at finding common interests. The common interests are really important because that's what helps you to bond with people, particularly if you're someone who struggles to connect with people in social and in professional situations. So let's look at what those common things could be, because those common problems tend to connect better and for longer for people. So if you're looking to go into a network where you have nothing in common with anybody else and you kind of stand out on your own, you don't really fit in, you're not going to be there for long because it's an uncomfortable place to be unless you step out of that comfort zone and become more part of that. That will be hard. Now, we've already said there's barriers when it comes to women in a lot of men's-oriented networking. There's barriers to men when it comes to networking amongst mostly female-oriented business networks. There's barriers to race, to inclusivity when it comes to gender identity, sexual identity, and even in the ability for you to speak the language. So understand that if you go to places where, if you're Chinese, for instance, the Chinese business network in your town or city is going to be a much easier place for you to relate to because you're dealing with other people who come from where you come from. It's not about locking yourself off from other people. What it's about doing is easing yourself in gently to somewhere where you know you're going to be valued and you're going to be understood and you're going to be a part of it. You're not going to feel like the standing out like a sore thumb. You're going to actually be part of a nurturing network that's going to help you along. So that's a really good way to start because it does allow you to be a bit more of a effective networker in a safer environment for you, for who you are. We find it a lot easier to relate to people who have common interests with us. If I'm into motorsports and this guy over here is into motorsports as well, we've got a common point of view to talk about that allows us to bond and form a relationship. And that's part of that whole process of coming to know you, coming to like you, coming to trust you. If I know you are also an AFL fan, if I know that you also love the Spice Girls, then we've got a common point of interest and a common point of reference that we can even meet each other and mention that interest to each other every time we see each other in a way to completely move that bond forward. And before you know it, you discover lots of other common interests you may have as well. And that allows you to be so much more effective at networking because you now feel comfortable with the people around you. And one way you can do this before you get to a networking function is to research the attendees before you meet them so you know a little bit about them. Does that sound creepy in the world of Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn particularly? It's not. I was in a networking function where I actually did a bit of networking yesterday with someone who was working at the networking function. They're not at the function, they were actually serving, and his name was Trevor, a great guy. And I knew a little bit about Trevor because he won an award at an awards ceremony the week before. So when I walked over and said, "Hey, I'd like to introduce myself. My name's Dante. I know you're Trevor. Congratulations on the award you won at the Digital Awards last week." He's like, "Oh, really? You know about that?" I went, yeah, I was actually one of the nominees for one of the other awards, and I was in the audience. I was really impressed with what you were able to achieve with that work you did with the DDoS prevention at early detection stage in cybersecurity. He was like, "Holy crap, you actually remember that?" It's like, "Yeah, of course I did, because I researched it on the way in. I wanted to see what you won so that if I ever come across you, I'll be able to make you feel like $100," to quote Kath and Kim, to make you feel like $1 million, basically, make you feel like, wow, someone actually noticed me. And he's a young guy who's just looking for his first job in IT. And I was able to introduce him to someone there who just so happened to have an IT firm. Now, whether that turns into a job for him or not, that's another deal. But what it does do is allow him to feel like he's known, listened to, and he's understood. But you got to look at what you're bringing to the party as well. It's not just about what people can offer you, it's about what you can bring. So yesterday I brought that to Trevor. That was my little gift to bring into it. And his whole shift, you can see, he was so happy and bouncy because he had a great start to a shift with a bunch of people he didn't know. And Trevor's from a diverse background. He's not a white guy. So he was appreciating that somebody would actually reach out and take a special moment to mention him. Networking is a two-way street. It definitely is. So what I'm going to know that Trevor's one day is going to run into me and say hello. He's going to recognize me in the street and say, oh, this is the guy who recognized me from the award I won from last year. So networking being a two-way street means that, you know, you got to give a little and then you can get a little as well. You can't just take. If you're one of those people who does tend to take, you're not going to enjoy the networking for long, because eventually people will stop giving to you. So plan to bring something along to the party with you. I'm not talking about a cheese platter or a keg of beer. I'm talking about bringing along some of your own expertise to the table. You are going to be the expert in the room at something at some stage. You may not be the biggest expert in the room or the one that everybody runs to when they want to talk, but you could be the one expert that has an answer to the question that someone else in the room happens to have. If you're trying to work out a code problem in developing your website, there just happened to be a WordPress developer in the room who you can talk to and get some advice with that. So why don't you bring some expertise? Have a think before you go in. What am I really good at? What are the things that I'm really, really talented at? What are the things that I really like and work so easily at? Rather than just trying to walk in and go, oh, who am I competing against for attention? Just walk in and know that I'm clearly the expert in the room. In the case of when I first joined a BNI chapter in the Gold Coast in Queensland many years ago, there was already a web developer who I was a web developer as well. They were a web developer in the chapter. But what I noticed was there was nobody who was a social media specialist who had a lot of expertise in social media. So I was able to contribute to that network with my knowledge of social media and ad platforms and all that sort of thing. So it actually gave me a point of difference. So when it's, oh, what do you do? I said, I work with social media. Oh my God, we've got social media. We do so badly at it. We could so use some help. And I picked up work all over the place because it's an area where so many people do so poorly at it. So bring your expertise to the table so you've got some advice to offer other people. And then research the attendees of a particular networking function you go to before it, if you've got access to that, and identify where the gaps are. That's what I did when I went into that BNI chapter. I saw that they had a member who was to do with websites, but no one to do with social media. I went, that's a really good group to get into. And the results I'll show you at the end of this webinar will give you an idea of some of the results that can be expected there, because it was really, really valuable for me. Now, younger business owners do find it more difficult to network, and that's often because they're juniors in their roles, or they might be very new at starting a business, and they don't feel like they've got a lot of wisdom to offer, because wisdom often comes with age. You know, the wise old mentor, she's there delivering the advice to the younger woman to help her get her leg up in this industry and to help her learn new things and learn the tactics and the strategies that have worked over the last 20 years for their particular business. It is difficult for younger people because they come in with a lot of, I guess, a little bit of imposter syndrome, but sometimes those younger people can be coming from very diverse backgrounds, so they don't feel confident even into stepping into an environment where people are very conservative and very suited and booted and wearing collared shirts and ties and leather shoes, where they might be used to working in bare feet in their board shorts in their living room or in their garage as they build their new business. So it's something you can do as someone who's been around business a long time but is poor at networking, is help contribute to that, help introduce that person into networking in a more fun and pie way. But if you really, really struggle with all this whole networking deal, it's helpful to get a higher purpose when it comes to your networking. I'm not saying to go and find a new god or to go in and find a new religious affiliation. I'm saying to get a bigger purpose before you go into a networking function. And a higher purpose comes from what your core reason for networking is. Have a think about that. What is the core reason why you want to do networking? Is it to do things that are to do with like you have to do it, like the preventer, or it's you've been told it's helpful, so you might as well get on board. I don't really want to do it, but I will do it because apparently it's really good for my professional development. When you find that core purpose, it will go beyond that. And go beyond just your personal reasons for going and doing something. It's finding a collective reason. And the collective reason is where your attendance to something like a networking function benefits something bigger than you. It will benefit something like your team. Your employees will feel more confident because you're out there selling the business to more and more people. Your people who you always serve, or the people who need to be served, may need your expertise. You may be the expert in the room that they really, really need. So you're doing it to help people. Going in with some kind of altruistic reason for doing something makes all the difference, because it's not just good enough to wake up every morning to go to work to make money. You need to have another reason, unless you hate your job and you just do it because it gives you 6 weeks off a year. That's a whole different deal and a whole different bucket of chips than trying to do something that's beyond you. For me, it's about having impact, and it's about growing small businesses and helping people to take control of their lives by taking them out of being so dependent upon jobs and the economy, and to drive their own futures. That helps drive me every morning to be the person I am. Or you might be doing it to give back. You've been very successful in business. Now you want to go in and give back a little. Or even if you've been moderately successful, you still want to give back something. You've got expertise you want to help others out with. These are not necessarily, all these noble things that make you feel like, oh, I'm so special. Well, I don't want to be so special and feel like I'm an idiot for doing this. Maybe look at it as a bigger reason altogether. A bigger reason for why you do what you do could be because you want to add more women's voices to this particular networking area or this particular industry. By you stepping up and becoming a leader, you're inspiring the next generation of women to be leaders as well. Or you're doing it for non-binary representation or trans representation, or Indian community representation, or Indigenous representation and visibility, where you say, okay, I've got the personality that can come through and actually make a success of this. So what if I do this and then become someone who's, I guess, I become the visible Indigenous person in this group, which allows other Indigenous people to follow as well. Now, I'm not Indigenous, I'm not going to say I am, but if you were an Indigenous person, you could step into that role and become a leader. And it's a hard thing to do if you're very introverted and nervous. But if you've got this bigger purpose, when your personal reasons for going to networking seem to fall down because you're not motivated, you don't know really what to do today, you don't really feel it, then these bigger reasons will get you in there, that you're doing this for other women, you're doing this for young people, you're doing this for representation for your culture, or you're doing this for representation of your people. Then it becomes a whole different story. It becomes a much bigger act to do. So where do we network? You might have learned all about, how to be a networker, what the value of being a networker is, but where do you go and network? Where do you start this process of connecting with other people? So we start off with understanding what kind of networks there are out there. The networks can be what we call open networks, where they're open to people to come into there. There's no real obligations there. You might be a member network where you need to be in a particular industry to become a member. And there's what we call the closed referral networks, which are more like those Givers Gain, BNI style chapter networks. And then there's what we call masterminds. So let's have a look at what all these different networks are, so you can choose wisely when it comes to the network that you want to work within. An open network generally requires no membership. It's an open invitation. Anyone can come along and they can be part of it. They can network, meet people, see their friends, get a free booze, free food sometimes, and just connect with people in a really, really open and casual way. They're not usually well facilitated. It's just turn up, have a drink, talk to the people you know, and then we'll get on with the speaker. That's generally what open networks are like. And they tend to be those local council and government sponsored events where you all turn up to Parliament House or Town Hall, and it's a bit open. You kind of look for the person you know and sort of stick to them, because there's no one facilitating the introductions to people. It could be open days with those closed or member networks where you're invited in to experience what it's like in those networks. That can be a really good way of introducing people to those, so that it's a bit more casual than what it normally would be. Business women's networks could be these. So there could be the only qualification to get into this network is that you're a woman. And so that becomes something that's very easy for you to go into, because you're going into a room of other women. Youth business networks tend to be quite open as well. They want to invite in as many young people as possible to connect with each other and help support each other through what's sometimes not a world that's very friendly to younger entrepreneurs and younger business starters. And then there's those local small business networks, which not so much your chambers of commerce, but more like a little small business network that might have been started up in the local area we've got one here called the Darwin Darwin City Retailers Association. And so they're not a chamber of commerce, but they're a collective who get together quite easily. And these are an open network that you need to be part of a particular geography to be able to join it, but it's not a huge thing that you have to go through criteria to get in. Now, your member networks usually require some kind of membership, and you need to be invited into those by a member. They often like a referral. You come in there and then you get qualified as a member and voted in by a committee. These member networks tend to be very industry specific, like the Skull Club is, which is an affiliation of tourism operators and travel people who work in tourism and travel industries. Or it could be something like the Energy Club, which is a connection of people who work in mineral extraction and gas and oil and those kind of areas. Or it could be that it's the Organic Producers Collective. And as a part of that, or the Agri-Food Business Network on the Sunshine Coast is a very good example of this, where you have a very specific thing that brings you together. You're all working in agribusiness and food production. It could be an Indigenous or a nationality-based network. So it could be the China-Australia Association. It could be the Australia-India Trading Association. It could be the Indigenous Business Network or IBA Australia, the Indigenous Business Association. Any of those are generally around a common theme or a common industry, chambers of commerce over a common area. Other industry peak bodies like the REIs or the REINT, the REIWA, REIQ, real estate institutes tend to connect people within real estate. Regional tourism associations, whether it's Whitsundays Tourism, Far North Queensland Tourism, Tourism Top End, Tourism Central Australia, Tourism Southwest, whatever those are, Kimberley Tourism as well, they're all gained around a specific area that everyone will have in common who becomes part of that network. And there could be then religious business network, or Christian businessmen's networks, or Christian business women's networks, or the Islamic Business Association, or Buddhist Business Networking International. Any of those those areas that have a very common theme can be very easy to come into as someone who also shares that common theme with the members. Your closed referral networks are definitely a membership required, and there's only really one member of each type of business. So you're not going to run into competitors quite as easily as you do in the member networks and the open networks. In fact, with the member networks, you can almost guarantee if it's as an industry based, just about everybody's going to be a competitor. So the networking you're doing there is not necessarily networking for work. It might be networking for sharing some resources and getting industry knowledge, but it's a very different approach. In these, the membership costs are generally a lot higher. They're regular or weekly event costs as well, where you need to go across every week to do a $25 breakfast. And there could be the referral of business to members. So it's not like you're referring business to the plumber down the road. You're referring the business to the plumber who's in your particular business network chapter or your business network association. These particular networking associations tend to have targets associated with what you do. There's accountability to like traffic light systems that say whether you're doing a good job as a network member or not. And you can actually get kicked out of the network if you're not contributing to the referrals and to the business that's generated within that chapter. So it can be a little bit harder to work at because there are accountable targets in there and an expectation that you turn up almost every week. That then comes with the offset that there is often training and mentoring that's packaged in that allows you to be able to work more effectively and to become a much better networker as well. And I think that's actually a really good opportunity for you to learn way more about networking and how to better reach out to other people, not just within the network, but outside of the network as well. Now we look at masterminds. Masterminds are very small groups, and they have ongoing costs as well as memberships, and they can be quite pricey. In fact, these are probably the most pricey of all the networks you can join because they are so small. Here's a very small group. There's no competitors in the room. You're all from different backgrounds. There's usually just the one facilitator who is not necessarily the one giving out all the advice, but they do have this sort of guru mentality behind them. I'm not a big fan of masterminds. I think they can tend to be very manipulative and controlling. So I don't tend to go to them myself, but some friends of mine absolutely swear by their masterminds. They think they're the best thing they've ever done. There's usually that one facilitator that's very high accountability factor. So if you don't like being held accountable to goals, not the place for you. And there's also some very intense monitoring that's going on in there too. It allows you to make sure that you are mentoring, not monitoring. Monitoring, it sounded really, really creepy. The mentoring is quite intense because they really are invested in your success as a member of that particular mastermind. So how do you choose a network? As we go into the closing stages of this particular webinar, how do you then choose a network? Choosing a network is all about finding what works for you. And I find to split it up into areas that we call brand, business, and bonding, the 3 Bs. Why would you choose a network? You do it because it suits the brand and your target market you're looking for, the business, that there's going to be some kind of business return for you, and the bonding, the social contact. Well, if you're not particularly sociable, maybe it's that ability to be able to find people with a similar background or a similar set of problems to you so you can solve them together. So let's look at brand awareness. You want to be able to get your brand in more people's minds. So a business network is a great way to do that. Networking is a very effective way of doing that. And it helps to link you through to meeting your target audience. Is your target audience in the room, or do people in the room have access to your target customer? If that's the case, then this might be a great place to get other people to do your marketing for you. That's the power of a network, not getting business from the network, but getting people to promote your business to their networks, because every one of us comes with our own set of friends and family and all that. So it's always much, much easier to do it that way. Then we look at business, the second B. This is where you want to make sure that your networking actually has some purpose that's going back to your business to help you gain new customers, to get more out of new customers, to get more people to know who you are, to get a return on investment. Wow. The ROI is one of the most important factors when it comes to any activity, particularly in marketing. And networking is a form of marketing. It's a highly personalized and slower way of marketing. It's not one to many, it's one to a small group. Or in most cases, the business you're going to do comes from personal referrals, 1 to 1. So there's got to be some kind of business reason why you're doing this networking and choosing this networking organization or chapter. And then there's the bonding. Do I feel good being here? Do I feel alive? Do I feel nurtured? Do I feel supported? And do I feel needed? Do I have something that other people need as well? Am I actually able to contribute something? It's just as important to be able to contribute than what it is to be able to ask for help. If you're someone who only ever asks for help and contributes nothing back, you're not only just a bad networker, but you're not getting the great benefit out of what mentoring and providing support can actually bring you. It actually makes you more of an expert in the room. It actually makes you more of the person other people want to refer real customers to, because you've shown no indication of what you're good at. All you've just shown is what you're bad at and what you need help at. So that bonding aspect is an important way to choose the kind of network you want to go into. So why do I personally network? Why do I go ahead and do it? Well, I go ahead and do networking because it's had definite return on investment. My time in BNI, even though I was only in there for 18 months, gave me $17,700 for a $2,800 investment. I'd skip ahead to things like Skull International. I've been in now for 5 years, invested about $3,000 in membership, sponsorship, and raffle prizes. And I've gained well over $147,000 in revenue because of that activity. I track all of my revenue back to where that revenue came from. $56,000 from $1,200 of investment with the Australian Computer Society and Tourism Top End. One of the ones that I've been really slack with this year, at $1,200 it's taken me to be membership of them for the last 4 years. $87,000 of revenue has come from those networks. That is why I personally do it. So would you like to dig more into networking with a guide? There's a way you can do it that's not going to cost the earth, and it's going to help you out through the the digital solutions program. The digital solutions program is delivered by Business Station in Western Australia, Queensland, and the Northern Territory, and offers for $44, 3 hours of one-to-one advisory, 4 hours of workshops and webinars. In fact, just a secret here, as many workshops and webinars as you really want to do. And there's a learning platform included in it, which will help BizClicks, which also helps you to learn more about things like how to use Microsoft Excel, how to configure your Outlook email, things like that. Really vital skills you're going to need at some point. You can sign up for this at businessstation.com.au, and it'll give you the option to be able to join this, use your ABN, and see if you qualify for this particular journey. And I'd love to join you on it. And if you'd like to work specifically with me on networking or anything at all, put my name in there as the advisor you'd like to work with. If not, we've got a stack of amazing advisors right across the country who are just waiting to be able to help you out with any of the sort of digital or business growth issues you're facing. Thank you so much for joining me this morning or this afternoon, depending on where you are. My name's Dante St. James. You can look me up on LinkedIn, Facebook, or Instagram, or please feel free to drop me an email at dante@businessstation.com.au, and I'll see how I might be able to assist you as well. In the meantime, please thank you for spending some time with me to work on your business, not just in your business, because that's what's important sometimes. You need to step out for an hour and learn something new so that you can grow your business. And I really do hope to see you in the next one of these videos.